Hi and welcome back to Exploring with Em and Stu.
So today we are here in Dover at a gun battery, and this one was called St Martin's Battery, right up on the hills overlooking the port.
That's right.
So some really interesting history about it. We're going to tell you a bit about it as we take you for a bit of a tour. So here we are inside one of three gun positions that they had here, and believe it or not, this battery was actually originally built in 1887, despite its appearance now being very much World War II. But originally it would have had three 10-inch rifle muzzle loading guns, which would have been right below me on the floor, not on this surface. But anyway, we're going to take you for a little look at some of the original bits from the Victorian times. So this large concrete skirt that I'm actually walking across would have been substantially higher than the gun itself, which would have been very much low down. Like I said, these were rifle muzzle loading guns, which would have obviously sort of popped up and shot out over the beautiful port here. There's not an awful lot up here of the original gun battery. That's more so down below. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to have take a look down there at some of the more Victorian parts of the gun battery. Now down here is where you'll see quite a lot of the Victorian original gun emplacement. As you can probably tell by this yellow brick, it's very much different to what we would normally see of the red brick of World War II. What is quite fascinating is down here is the original ground level of the gun emplacement. And if you look very carefully, you can see that it's actually got these rails, which would have been where small wagons would have been, and they would have put the ammunition on there and wheeled it, before these steps obviously were built, straight to those massive rifle muzzle loading guns. And there's a few more little bits of Victorian stuff along here. This, or World War II, we'll talk about that later. But here we have an entrance to one of the original magazines, from the Victorian magazines, where they would have obviously kept all the ammunition. It looks as if there's one of these for each of the guns, so 3 in total. One of them we can have a little look into, so we'll get over there and we'll have a little peek. So here we have the entrance to the very east gun emplacement. This is the magazine obviously for it. As you can see, somebody has made us a bit of an entrance, which I suppose is handy, but a bit of a shame that vandalised it. But here we go. It's not overly substantial in here, but we'll have a little look. This bit, like I said, is all Victorian from the 1870s and 80s. They would have obviously have kept ammunition in here, so it's not overly big. What have we got there? I'm not really sure whether this would have had small light tunnels. It looks like that's actually been bricked up with World War II bricks. So I reckon this was a light tunnel for obviously safely lighting the magazines without naked flames coming into contact. Here we go. And there you are. It's literally just like a little shell room really. But it's nice and clean. They would have had a slightly more substantial place that they kept their ammunition as well. So we're going to get out and we'll have a little bit of a chat about that in a second. Right.
So Emma's just literally just come out of there, but I've got a few questions. Oh. And there's a few questions you might be able to answer.
Right.
The magazines don't seem to be that big for the size gun and the size place this is.
No, well that's what I was just saying actually while I was in there, is that these were almost like the expense magazines, sort of. You know, they're only very small magazines. Now, apparently so, when this was first built, they had quite a large magazine at the Archcliffe Gate, which was quite some distance away from here. And in the end, they decided that that was a bit of a nuisance to keep bringing it to refill up these smaller magazines. And just behind, they built a slightly larger magazine, which is very interesting. So we'll go and have a little look at that.
Okay, and then obviously we're going to go through a couple of the World War II things, and a couple of the features here are quite interesting.
Yeah.
And folly.
Yes, folly. You said folly.
Lots of word folly. Okay, let's go and have a look at this this battery or this gun
magazine
store.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about the World War II stuff, I think.
Right, let's go. Right, so just immediately behind the large gun emplacements, you can see a locked gate. Very intriguing. But if you look very closely at some of the finer details, especially above, you will see that this is Victorian. In fact, it's got a date up there, which I believe says 1880 something. I'm not too sure, we'll have to look closely, but definitely Victorian. Now this was what they built to, basically as an extension of those magazines to store all the gun shells. It's not overly substantial in there, but it was certainly bigger than what they had here and closer than what they had at the Archcliffe Gate. It's worth mentioning while we're here also that in World War II they extended this substantially to build a shelter for the crew, air raid shelter basically. Unfortunately we can't get in it, which is a real shame because it would be very cool if we could. But no, certainly worth mentioning. But we've got some more features to show you, so we're going to have a look.
So some of the features that we've been looking at is really good, like the sort of the other extra bit of gun storage, and obviously these buildings. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Not the graffiti is amazing, but the actual building there is pretty incredible. I like that.
Well, what's quite impressive here is this is probably one of the most substantial parts from the Victorian times. I love the way that they put these little details, like almost just like ornamental parts, which they didn't even have to do. This was just a gun emplacement. But that's the Victorians for you. You know, they really knew how to do things back in those days. I don't actually know why there's a ladder up here. I mean, we're not going to climb up there to find out, but that's quite interesting. Looks a bit dangerous anyway. I guess they used to lever something up and down maybe, if you look right up the top there. But we carry on. We'll have a look down here. Now, you can see this ruinous part here, and if you look very closely, you could see that was clearly a replica of what we've just shown you. Apparently, the Borstal boys or something demolished this as some sort of training exercise or just something to keep them busy, I don't know. But this is the entrance again to some of those Victorian shell rooms in there. Again, like I said, it would have come out to here, but it's all been demolished, unfortunately. But this is quite an interesting feature. Is most magazines needed ventilation, and here we've got that sort of cavity wall that we often see. But this has actually got those ornamental sort of grates to it. What would you call them, Stu?
Terracotta grates, because they're like a terracotta, aren't they?
Yeah, right, we'll go with that. Again, beautifully ornate. You know, they really didn't have to do that, considering this was just basically, you know, a killing machine. You know, but it's nice that they did. And that brings us on to a huge chunk of World War II, which I think it's probably about time we actually start talking about the massive adaptations that they made in the Second World War. So let's get back up onto the gun emplacement and we'll have a look at those. Right, so we're just coming up from the Victorian part. Again, you can very clearly see the difference between the Victorian bit and the World War II bit. In fact, actually, if you look closely, you can see a stripe of original paint. Very likely it was green and cream, as usual. But here we are, substantially higher up now. Now, it never would have been like this in Victorian times. In fact, what I'm stood on would have probably been, what, 2 meters lower, I imagine. And as you can see in the middle here, this was the 6-inch breech loading gun that I believe that they had mounted here in 1942, World War II. Quite impressive, looking out over onto the harbour. So that's one of the additions that they made. As you can see, that was housed in this ginormous, well, it was a gun shed, wasn't it, basically? But there's some little rooms and things around the back here, so we'll have a little look and see if we can figure out what they used to be. So just below that World War II adaptation, they built some additional storage for the shells and everything, magazines. These are red brick, so this was clearly all added on during World War II. Now, we've got these strange little compartments here. I can only assume that they probably were shells and things in there for the ammunition. Along here it would have been like expense magazines, ready to stick straight in the guns, and it would have been loaded up from the main magazines that would have been elsewhere. But just coming round to the gun emplacement, which is just here, we've got more of these expense magazines, shell lockers. Unfortunately, they are absolutely chock-a-block with rubbish, often the way. But I can't see any remnants of any sort of doors. Often you see big metal doors on these things, but can't see that here. So maybe they didn't have that. But this is quite unusual because it was so adapted, obviously, from its original Victorian form. But there we go, and you can see out over there where the gun emplacement would have been.
I think Emma done really well down in the gun locker storage there.
Although it did smell a bit like a toilet.
It probably...
And it looked a bit like one too.
Absolutely. But I'll tell you what's really, really interesting now. Above the gun house, which is this bit here, you'll see this red brick. Really interesting. It is only a theory. I have been told by historians, we both have.
Yeah, very plausible theory.
That actually these were follies. These actually were built to make it look like these were bombed out houses.
Yeah.
So the way that the brick is actually sort of jagged and formed is actually a folly, which is really quite interesting.
It is, because obviously this was originally a Victorian gun emplacement.
Absolutely.
Wasn't used apparently at all during World War I. So I can only assume that by the time World War II came along, the Germans, they wanted to fool them into thinking that it was still, you know, a disarmed, abandoned, old gun emplacement from the Victorian times.
Yeah, and
we've never seen anything like that before.
No.
It is only a theory, but do you know what? Looking at it, it's clearly been rendered.
It's been rendered that way.
In that sort, nobody would have built a wall with the bricks all higgledy-piggledy like that.
Absolutely not.
What would you normally have on top of a gun emplacement?
Nothing.
Like this? So that's
Nothing, just a roof.
Actually, really incredible, and maybe Stu will get a little bit more of a close-up of that in his cinematics. But I think we might have just about seen everything here for now.
We have, yeah.
But maybe we'll have a poke around. We have actually got a little pillbox up there. Maybe we'll take a quick look up there.
Yeah, and then I think we'll say goodbye.
Yeah. Right.
We've just come into this
as promised,
kind of weird pillbox, something that we don't really come across that much. Emma's actually touching it.
Yeah, well, we are in Dover, and obviously different areas, like with Suffolk and their Suffolk squares they had, Dover had its Dover quads. This is actually a Type 23 pillbox, obviously put here in World War II. There was a couple either side of the gun emplacement, I do believe, were put here. But this is clearly an artillery pillbox.
I would say it's a machine gun post, yeah.
I reckon a machine gun was mounted on here. It's got an amazing view looking out over the docks, and the usual sort of pillbox sort of room here. Maybe we'll have a very quick glance at that, I suppose.
Very quick. I've been in there. It's not very pleasant.
It's not pleasant. Oh, okay,
but we'll go in there. We'll have a quick look, and I think we were going to say goodbye to you. We've got other projects to do. You see.
Yes, plenty more places to go.
So, okay, we'll see you in a sec.
So here we are.
We are. We're just coming down.
Inside the. It doesn't smell as bad as I thought. Very typical. I mean, we've all seen pillboxes with loopholes. Looking inland.
Do you know what?
This.
I'm actually going to show them.
Has got an incredible view. You can see why they put it
that
here.
That is an amazing view. I don't know if you can pick that up on the camera. It's actually really cool.
Even on a foggy day like today.
Absolutely. Look at that. I mean, obviously the tree weren't there.
No.
But if you look at that, that was actually quite amazing.
That is. I mean, you can see exactly. This was a prime spot, obviously, for locating and seeing what was coming in. Aircrafts and things. We've got ricochet wall.
Anti-ricochet wall.
Yeah, for if anybody shot in, it wouldn't have obviously hurt the guy who was maybe stood over it.
No,
that's what anti-ricochet walls were for. Mounts for where they probably would have had their
they would have been rifle shells.
I reckon so, yeah, for rifles.
Rifle shells.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's thousands of them still all over the country, but it's always interesting when we find one that is just a slight bit different to some of the other ones. So, thought we'd give you a look.
And that is the end of our thing. So we're going to get out and say goodbye to you lot.
Absolutely. Come on.
Get on for that. So we've actually finished this amazing tour of this gun battery.
It's been really quite interesting because of obviously it's heavily adapted and all the rest of it over the years. We've never seen anything like this before, really, have we?
No, and I would like to mention one thing before we go into this. It's like 17 degrees today.
It's February.
And it's February.
Yeah.
And these are new videos. This isn't done last year. This is done this year. This is unbelievable.
This is Valentine's Day. This is our Valentine's Day hour.
It is.
I love it.
But this has been amazing.
The Port of Dover behind us. Amazing location for a gun battery, of course. And just in front of us, we've got one of those gun houses. But anyway, yeah, this has been really quite incredible.
Absolutely.
We hope you enjoyed looking around us on that little bit of a tour. We hope we've explained it well enough. I'm sure that there's plenty more information out there on the internet if you want to look it up.
Absolutely. So, as from Exploring Web and Stew, on another Dover trip.
Yep.
We hope you've enjoyed it.
We appreciate you watching, and if you've liked it, please give it a like and subscribe. We'd love for you to subscribe and tell us what you think. We'll have a nice little chat about your thoughts about this amazing
and also
place.
don't forget, you can join our Patreon for £3 a month where you get exclusive content.
Yeah, all the details are below in the description.
Okay.
From Dover at St Martin's Battery.
We'll see you again.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye-bye.